Thank you all. We're live here, and thank you again, St. David's. I am calling us to order with prayer. And if you are following, as you should, in your order of business, this is item 1, number 1. Let us pray. Almighty and ever-living God, source of all wisdom and understanding, be present with those who take counsel in this convention of the Episcopal Diocese of Tennessee for the renewal and mission of your church. Teach us in all things to seek first your honor and glory, guide us to perceive what is right, and grant us both the courage to pursue it and the grace to accomplish it through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Ever-living God, whose will it is that all should come to you through your Son, Jesus Christ, inspire our witness to him, that all may know the power of his forgiveness and the hope of his resurrection, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. All right. Let me say a few words about protocol for the convention, just as by way of reminder to all of us. One of the protocols of convention is that if you do rise to the mic at any time, your comments, your words are addressed to the chair. So this is to avoid, cross conversations, mic to mic. So you're always speaking to the chair. If you should go to the mic without invitation, in the general invitation to go to the mic, please identify yourself by name and by parish before you speak. So that will be a great help to the convention and a great help to the chair. Then also, there's also a convention about forms of address. So the chair is Right Reverend Sir, or I will accept Bishop John, or even if you're really venturesome, Bishop Bauerschmidt, but that is a mouthful. Right Reverend Sir is completely correct when you address the chair. So those are some protocol issues, just a little way of reminder for the chair and for all of us. All right, at this time, I call upon Robert Osborne for a report from the Credentials Committee.
Right, Reverend Sir. This is a report of the Credentials Committee to the 191st Annual Convention. The number of voting clergy delegates present is 40. The voting lay delegates present, 82. The total voting delegation present, 122. Non-voting lay alternates present, 11. Visitors present, 6. Non-canonically resident clergy present, 10. For a total number present of 149.
Thank you. All right, all seems in order. I certify that we have a quorum and we can continue with our convention business. Thank you all very much for being here. All right, if you are following along, we are at item 4, and I'm going to invite you to turn to page 13 of your convention materials. See, we have a rundown of officers of convention, and at this point we've got a few that we need to elect. So, beginning with the Secretary of Convention, I nominate the Reverend Dr. Christine Blaze as Secretary of Convention. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you all very much. Also, item B, I nominate the Reverend Canon Jody Howard as Assistant Secretary of this convention. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Thank you all very much. And then at this time I appoint Jim Weatherly, Chancellor of the Diocese, as our parliamentarian. All right, if you all will now turn to page 4 of your convention materials. Ooh, wait a minute, that's where we are. If you'll look at your order of business, even though we're embarked upon it, we still need to adopt it.
Right, Reverend Sir, I would move the adoption of the order of business and the rules of order as contained in the handout.
Thank you. All those in favor of our order of business and rules of order adoption, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you all very much. At this point, I am delighted to introduce the Reverend Carolyn Coleman, who's going to welcome us to St. David's.
On behalf of the good people of St. David's, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to the 191st gathering of the Diocese of Tennessee. I've started calling this affair Camp Convention. It's a diocesan convention, but camp style. We're in the woods, we're in tight quarters, there's little parking, and the facilities need a gentle touch, and we've enjoyed a picnic. And we'll have another one tomorrow, right? So camp is also where you forge lasting relationships, and a relationship is what St. David's does best. We hope that you'll find that to be true during your time here this weekend. I'd like to thank the diocese for believing in us and for helping make convention fit into our little cabin here on the hill. And I'd also like to recognize the many, many members and staff of St. David's who have come out to help put this together and to tidy up our building and campus. I cannot begin to name them all, but if you see one with a multicolored logo that is much like the window and back of us here, be sure to thank them. And thank you so much, each and every one of them, for helping. Finally, I want to encourage you to ask for any help. Susan Huggins, I don't know if she's on the floor of convention. I don't think she is. Kim Dougherty, there are convention co-chairs, or myself, if there's anything that you might need, or if anything that needs attention, such as trash or toilets or something like that. And I hope that you'll, while you're here, avail yourself to the beautiful hillside. There's trails up in the woods, and if you're lucky, you'll cross paths with the fox or the owls that live up in there. Thank you very much for being here to do the work of the diocese, which is ultimately doing the work of loving of the divine in the world. And if you'll indulge me, I would really, really like to take a selfie with everybody. Is that okay? Everybody wave. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get you guys in it.
Thank you again, Carolyn, for your warm welcome and all the hospitality that's been shown to us this weekend. We're grateful. All right, if you'll continue on to look on page 23. We have there a list of clergy licensed to officiate in the diocese, and as a privilege of the chair, I am granting them seat and voice. Also would like to add to that list of folks who are being given seat and voice, Tabitha Sanko, who is our brand new lay vicar at St. Anselm's, and she and her daughter are here with us. We are delighted to see you, Tabitha. Thank you. If you'll turn then on to page 24. This is an accounting of clergy new to the diocese, clergy in new cures, and major transitions. And as I call your name, if you would, if you are present, please stand in place. So, clergy new to the diocese and clergy in new cures, the Reverend Antoinette T.J. Azar, St. Michael's, Cookville. The Reverend Michael Blaze, Redeemer, Shelbyville. The Reverend David Goodpastor, both St. James Swanee and continuing on at STEM. The Reverend Malone Gillum, St. George's, Nashville. The Reverend Bradley Johnson, St. James the Less, Madison. The Reverend Caroline Osborne, St. Philip's, Nashville. And then Tabitha Zonko, St. Anselm's, Nashville. If you all would give these folks a round of applause. If you'll continue on page 24, the necrology, folks who have served as deputies, delegates to this convention in the past. I'll read their names and ask for a moment of silence for prayer. Clergy, Linda Hutton, John Kenneth, Aletha Dolores Nicholson, and Tom Wilson. And then also delegates to this convention, deceased, Macklin Davis Sr., Jim Rutledge, Steve Sachs. A moment of silence. Rest eternal grant to them, O Lord, and let light perpetual shine upon them. Thank you. Item 10 in our order of business, appointments by the bishop. First of all, to our convention committees. If you'll turn to page 26, you will find an accounting. You will cast your eyes over these committees. There is one amendment, and that is Ann Denson, unable to be here. Nat Howry of St. David's is taking that place on the Committee on Elections. I hereby declare them all appointed to these committees. There are some other appointments as well, and that is to other commissions, committees, and boards. If you will turn to page 27, continuing on. These appointments are staggered in such a way that we don't appoint to every body every year. So what we have on your order of business is an accounting of appointments this year. So if you'll look and see, I am making these appointments to the Architectural Committee that you'll see listed there. The asterisked names are new appointments. Christian Formation Committee, making those appointments. The Church Pension Fund, Standing Committee on Church Pension Fund, again making a couple of appointments. The Commission on Stewardship, making a number of new appointments there. Standing Committee on Constitution and Canons, one amendment on your list and that is T.J. Azar is also is a new appointment this year to that standing committee. Continuing work in the Diocese of Littoral, you'll see that there's one new appointment there. And then page 27 to 28, if you'll turn the page to 28, you'll see that there are some new appointments to the Curcio Commission. Continuing on, this is an annual appointment, a new appointment to the Episcopal School of Nashville, to the board. New appointments to the Evangelism and Congregational Development Commission, Small Church Alliance. Also to the Beloved Community Commission on Racial Reconciliation. You'll see that there are a couple of new appointments and one amendment, which is to note that Sally Carlson Bancroft, Church of the Resurrection, is a new appointment. Continuing on to page 29, you will see that there are new appointments to the Vocational Diaconate Committee, and then also new appointments to the Youth Steering Committee. Now, if you will turn to page 30, this continuing on, there are a number of individual appointments. The first being a couple of appointments to a new ecumenical officer and also an assistant ecumenical officer. That's Michael Whitna as ecumenical officer, Sarah Pereira as assistant ecumenical officer. All right. Our intake officer has a 2-year term. No need to reappoint, but we do need to appoint a church attorney for Title IV, Jason Callan. Then also, we're blessed by a number of chaplains to retired clergy. The Reverend Roger Seneschal, Diana Seneschal, the Reverend Canon Sandy Herman, and Ginger Herman. We're grateful for those ministries. Now, an amendment. Chaplain to clergy spouses. Late breaking news. The Reverend Vicki Burgess is chaplain to clergy spouses. Make that appointment. I'm appointing as our Safe Church, Safe Community officer, the Venerable Roger Satterstrom. And then as EFM coordinator, Jean Larson, St. Paul's, Franklin. All right, thank you all very much. It really does take a number of people in order to resource the work of our diocese, so I'm grateful to everybody who is continuing to serve and also all those who have agreed to serve in this coming year. Item 11, at this time I'd like to call on the Secretary of Convention to tell us if there's any action on receiving late resolutions.
Right, Reverend Sir, we have no late resolutions.
All right, very good. Announcement of late nominations. Again, I'm calling on the Secretary.
Right, Reverend Sir, we do have late nominations, and they were handed to you in a packet that looks like this.
It's in your, I have mine. Some of you are wondering. I've got it right here. It's in the brown folder that you would have received at the time you registered. All right, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, please do note those late nominations. At this time, I would like to call on the chair of our Committee on Resolutions of Invitation, Gratitude, Greeting, and welcome. I think that's the Reverend Caroline Osborne.
Right Reverend Sir, the resolutions of the Committee on Memorials, Greetings, and Resolutions of Appreciation include the following. Committee Resolution Number 1, Resolution of Invitation. Be it resolved that the 191st Annual Convention of the Diocese of Tennessee acknowledges and greets in the name of Jesus Christ all seminarians, all religious, the Dean and faculty of the School of Theology of the University of the South, the Vice Chancellor of the University of the South, the Headmaster and faculty of St. Andrew's Swanee School, seminarians and candidates for holy orders of this diocese, all retired clergy, and all lay delegates unable to attend this convention, and acknowledges their ministry and service in the Diocese of Tennessee. And be it further resolved that all ordained ministers of this church, canonically resident in this diocese, officiating under license and in charge of congregations, designated representatives of university chapels and mission stations, and of the Episcopal youth of the diocese, be given seat and voice in the deliberations of this convention. And be it further resolved that ministers of other communions resident in Middle Tennessee and present at this convention be cordially welcomed by this convention. Committee Resolution Number 2, a resolution of gratitude. Be it resolved that the 191st Annual Convention of the Diocese of Tennessee expresses its heartfelt thanks to the clergy, staff, and people of St. David's Episcopal Church, Nashville, for hosting and enabling the live stream of the convention. Be it further resolved that the convention expresses its gratitude to the officers and various members of delegations and convention committees for their diligent work in the preparation of this convention. Committee Resolution Number 3, a resolution of greeting. Be it resolved that the 191st Annual Convention of the Diocese of Tennessee greets the Right Reverend Brian L. Cole, 5th Bishop of the Diocese of East Tennessee.
All right, thank you very much. Grateful to the committee. The chair asked whether we might adopt these by acclamation, if it's the convention's will. You don't need to even move it. You just have to clap. All right. Thank you so much. All right. Item 13 is a special order, and the chair is going to introduce our special order. It really is a great pleasure to welcome Brian Cole as our keynote speaker here at this convention. We are blessed with good colleagues to west and east of us, but we're especially blessed with Bishop Cole's ministry. He has been the 5th Bishop of East Tennessee since 2017. It was a great pleasure to journey to his consecration with Bishop William Sanders in the back seat of my car. That was a trip I don't mind saying. But we were so blessed to be there and to participate in Bishop Cole's consecration. Before coming to East Tennessee, Bishop Brian was in first Western North Carolina and then in the Diocese of Lexington. And you got your start in the boot heel of Missouri, I believe. So Brian has been our neighbor one way or the other for a while, but we are just blessed to have such a good colleague here in the state, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming Bishop Cole as our keynoter today. Can you all hear? Yeah. I say, go for it.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm going to read passage from 2 Corinthians that's the theme for the convention. You can't hear me? Can you hear me now? Should I go to the pulpit? Can you hear me now? Okay. It's not me, it's you, right? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to read the passage from 2 Corinthians is the theme. But the Lord said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you, for power is made perfect in weakness. So I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may dwell in me." Again, good afternoon. It is good to be before you. I'm grateful for the invitation from Bishop Bowerschmidt to speak to you today and join in tomorrow's liturgy. As the Bishop of the Diocese of East Tennessee, I am mindful of our long-standing familial connections to each other. Your diocese is indeed the mother both to the Diocese of West Tennessee and East Tennessee. I know I speak for Bishop Phoebe Rowe from West Tennessee when I say we value our friendship with Bishop John and continue to pray for new and creative ways to support each other in the shared ministry in the state of Tennessee. In February of 2020, John and Phoebe and I met what we call the Sewanee Summit to begin to think about what would it look like to do more ministry together across the state of Tennessee. We are therefore responsible for COVID. Gave us a chance to do some collaborative work together, and I'm also grateful for the friendship extended to my wife Susan Weatherford by Caroline Bowerschmidt. We have not been in Tennessee long, but John and Caroline have helped this to feel like home. I also want to acknowledge that all our... Is the sound continuing to move? Can you hear me? Excellent. You also have all the problems? All the problems are going to be solved. I'm a traveling preacher. So should I keep this? Okay. All righty. I think someone should rule me out of order, right? So I also want to acknowledge that all our Tennessee dioceses share an abiding affection and continued gratefulness for the ministry of Bishop William Sanders. It was a great honor to share with Bishop John and Bishop Phoebe in the burial Eucharist for Bishop Sanders at Christ Cathedral in Nashville in December 2021. And after a season, it was also good to welcome Bishop Sanders home to St. John's Cathedral in Knoxville, where his ashes are committed. As the first bishop of the Diocese of East Tennessee, Bishop Sanders gave the new diocese a gifted and wise and tested bishop. Over the course of his ordained life, I'm aware that Bishop Sanders made Chattanooga, Memphis, Knoxville, and Nashville all a home. It takes quite a person to hold this state together, and Bishop Sanders was such a person. Several weeks ago, Bishop John and Canon Jody Howard reached out to me and invited me to give input on your convention theme. After sitting with that invitation prayerfully for several days, which is pious talk for I failed to get back to them, and after receiving a gentle follow-up message from email from them, I responded with this passage from 2 Corinthians, which includes this paradox of power made perfect in weakness. As long as I can remember and as long as I have understood the definition of a paradox, I have been fascinated by the paradoxes found in the New Testament. Power or strength made perfect in weakness, a call to love the enemy, finding your life by losing it. If we're going to follow Jesus, we had better be prepared for these great reversals, these ongoing everyday moments when the gospel keeps changing our thinking and ways of seeing and encountering the world. We thought the path would lead this way, the way we already wanted to go. Jesus, however, takes us a new way where we must admit we're not in control. The gospel is profound in its ability to confound what we might consider common sense thinking. In order to embrace the wisdom of the risen and reconciling Christ, we must first unlearn things before embracing the things that are real in God's movement. At the time when I responded to your bishop in canon, however, power made perfect in weakness still existed in my life purely as paradox, a theological concept, a literary device. As the son of a father who was a high school English teacher for 37 years, I am comfortable with literary devices. When the New Testament speaks of the eternal divine as the Word, I am all in for that. In the South, I know many of you think of a football stadium as another kind of church. For me, the other kind of church besides a church is a library. If you'll allow me to chase a narrative rabbit for a moment, when I consider where we are today, the young boy in me considered Nashville to be the eastern edge of the universe. You all had an Opryland and a Holiday Inn with an outdoor swimming pool and other such exotic urban trappings. I grew up in southeastern Missouri, 90 miles from Memphis, and the next town over from Cheryl Crow's hometown. My hometown was situated off of Interstate 55. It was poor and it was flat. We were surrounded by cotton and soybeans. We were Baptist and Methodist and Church of Christ, and all the Roman Catholics I knew were on television. I mentioned my father was a high school English teacher. Everyone else's father was a farmer. Those dads drove trucks with gun racks. My father drove a Ford Granada with cruise control. The other fathers hunted and fished and chewed tobacco. My father made a mean tuna noodle casserole, taught evening classes at the junior college across the state line in Arkansas to help make ends meet, and did his best to feign interest in my short-lived baseball career during Little League and Pony League years. I grew up Baptist, and I grew up very comfortable with all the ways in which the Christian faith was about concepts and words and ideas. The Christian faith was not located in my physical body or even my heart as much as it was my head. I knew the words of Jesus were in red in the Bible with my zipper cover, and I believed the other things I needed to know in order to follow Jesus were also words to memorize, words to repeat, words to know. The Word watched over me, and the other words kept me safe. Our town library was small, and it was staffed by one librarian, Miss Poe, and it was open for a total of 18 hours a week, 2 to 5 every weekday afternoon and 9 to 12 on Saturday. If I was not on the baseball diamond as a child, I was at the Conran Memorial Library on the town square. While the other children in my town lived in fear of Miss Poe and all of her rules for conduct in the library, I was not afraid of her. I knew I was a favorite of hers, with my father serving on the library board. It helps to know people. She allowed me to check out the book on the History of the World series on a semi-permanent loan. I can now say, because of the statute of limitations, that when no one else was in the library, Miss Poe would walk across the street to the drugstore and purchase Coca-Colas in small glass bottles, which we would then drink in the library unless other patrons walked in. No wonder that library felt like a church. Coca-Cola was the chief sacrament. So again, words, ideas, literary and theological categories have for many years been the places of my deepest comfort. So when you asked for a theme, I gave your bishop and canon a paradox, a literary device. I gave them words. It's what I know how to give. When Paul speaks of power or strength made perfect in weakness, I do not believe he was struggling with how to communicate the gospel of Jesus Christ to believers in Corinth and decided, I'll try a literary device. When Paul speaks of power made perfect in weakness to a body of believers, he's reflecting on his own physical body and its limitations, the thorn in his flesh, and that grace showed up where his body could not. Where his body failed him, grace abounded. Like the risen Christ that met him on the road to Damascus, Paul had been pierced. 2 Corinthians is a letter about weakness. The people appear to be underwhelmed by Paul in comparison to the super apostles who have been showing up to proclaim a different kind of gospel. They speak better, they have more charisma, they appear to be the kind of people whose deals start working out after following Jesus. The prosperity gospel has been with us from the beginning. In the incarnation, we confess that God became flesh, that Jesus, the human face of God, walked among us. When we confess that God's grace is present in the world, such grace is best known, I believe, in an incarnational manner as well. Deep grace is not simply known as a theological category. Deep grace is best felt in the body and in your bones. Deep grace is, I can now say, being felt in my body and in my bones. For the last several weeks, the idea of strength made perfect in weakness has ceased to be simply a paradox, a literary device, a theological concept for me. It's beginning to feel like grace centering itself in my body and in its newfound lack. I am beginning to experience a failure in my body. I am losing my hearing. I first noticed that I was having trouble distinguishing between a person standing and speaking in front of me while background noise at a church reception surrounded us. Can I get a witness to that, anybody? Thank you. If I really concentrate on their lips, if I lean my head a certain way, I mostly got what they had to say. As a bishop, however, church receptions are not a rare occurrence. Can I get a witness to that? Yeah.
Amen, brother.
Yeah. They keep coming Sunday after Sunday. So I set up time to be tested by an audiologist. As it turned out, 2 audiologists administered the test. They appeared to be 15 years old each. I explained to them my dilemma, and they nodded while writing items on a clipboard. I feared they were writing, "Old man can't hear." At the end of the test, they congratulated me. They did not say, "Your hearing is fine and you're good to go." Rather, they said, "It was wise to get here and to have your hearing tested, as you have hearing loss in both ears with significant hearing loss in your left ear." So we set up a time for me to be fitted for hearing aids. The next day, when I told the diocesan staff about the hearing test and the outcome and that my hearing is worse on my left side, they all nodded in agreement. They all said, "We knew your left side was your bad ear." They explained how I hold my head a certain way when they spoke to me from that side. Upon being told this, I fired all of them. you want to turn in resumes during the break, you're invited to do so. I did not fire them. They were aware, however, of something I did not want to know. I did not want to know that my physical body needed help. I wanted power made perfect in weakness to remain a theological category, a literary device. Grace, the grace of God, which we need like we need water and rest and nourishment, is somehow still a thing we want to treat as optional in case we cannot do this life on our own, under our own power. No matter what I might confess in a creed, I have spent too much of my life trying to save my own life. And for too much of my life, I have deluded myself into thinking I was good at it. This whole saving your own life approach. For too much of my life, I have only thought of my physical body as something able to help others and not something that might also need help. I am tall, so I can reach things without ladders. This impresses people. While I do not have a green thumb when Susan needs things toted in the garden, I have the spiritual gift of toting. I'm strong enough to tote things, so again, helpful with my body for someone else, for someone I love. When COVID lockdown arrived in mid-March 2020, Susan and I soon discovered a 5-mile walking loop from our house to the park near the YMCA and back. Each day for much of 2020, we would walk that loop, and within and with our bodies, we would exercise the anxiety of the unknown and the uncertainty that orbited around us like no doubt it orbited around you. That loop goes uphill, downhill, before going uphill again and then downhill. At that point, you're halfway out. So to return, you go uphill, then downhill before going uphill again and then downhill. On that long walk in the early days of the lockdown, when there was very little car traffic, the sound of birds seemed to be even louder in and around our house and along that walk. In my body, I considered anew the birds of the air and how they are not anxious because God cares for them and clothes them. So in my body, walking daily, uphill and downhill, I practiced Jesus' invitation not to worry. In my body, uphill and downhill, I felt as if I was outpacing anxiety's ability to keep up with me. I was able to experience this because my body could move with ease. My father, along with teaching high school English, earned extra money by also overseeing the publication of the high school newspaper and yearbook. That meant a copy of every high school yearbook in my hometown since 1954 resided in our home. As a child, I read them constantly, poring over the photos and achievements and antics of high school students over numerous generations. I treated those yearbooks like they were sacred text. My favorite section of the yearbook was the portion devoted to the senior class. Along with a photo of each student, a listing of their participations in sports and clubs and achievements, both social and academic, were situated nearby. It did not take me long to know that you wanted to be a senior with line after line listing all that you had done during your 4 years in high school. To this day, I remain in awe of Jimmy Morgan, class of 1975, Terry Turnage, class of 1975, and Jerry White, class of 1970, who were able to accomplish so many things during their high school years. We were not worthy of them. But woe to the students who appeared to have somehow floated through high school without anything attaching to them. No clubs, no sports, nothing to go along with their photos. In their empty space where others had accomplishments, my father would always be sure to place a quotation from Emerson or Dickinson, anything to fill the void. Now, years removed from high school, we know that serving as the captain of the football team, or being voted most likely to succeed does not keep cancer away or make you immune from unemployment or mental health challenges. Your life is not saved when you are inducted into the National Honor Society. And your life is not lost when you are cut from the basketball team, though it feels like it is. Still, the enduring temptation is to believe we can save ourselves by our own works and our own achievements. And if for a season we inhabit a physical body that seems to work, to achieve, to triumph over others, then we consider God's grace as a necessary option only for the others who cannot make it on their own. Now, we would not be so thoughtless as to mock their need for grace. But we might for a season delude ourselves and possibly give thanks we were able to rely on ourselves alone. If we do give thanks for that, it is not God who receives such thanks, because God did not make us his people without need of grace. We are thanking a false God of self and self alone. Now, I need to admit that this lesson that I'm learning about grace's best and truest destination, the finite human body, is a piece of wisdom many of you have known for a long, long time. I'm not telling you something new. If anything, you might be underwhelmed to think a bishop is just now getting this lesson and learning how to receive grace in its most real expression. I'm admitting how long the Christian faith has been for me an exercise in my head, something to master in a classroom setting. And now that I'm accepting help from my own body, I'm sensing grace in ways too deep for words. If I'm just now understanding grace in this deeper physical way, it's not because God failed to place people in front of me who were teaching me about grace in my body. I think it was simply because I did my best to keep the grace they were extending to me, from touching my own body. As a newly ordained priest in Asheville, North Carolina, my first assignment was as vicar of Church of the Advocate. Church of the Advocate is a worshiping community that ministers to the street community in downtown Asheville. Both then and now it meets in the Undercroft at Trinity Episcopal Church on Sunday afternoons. Along with the weekly Eucharist, a lunch was shared with all, both for those who had arrived early for worship and those who came just for the meal. On a typical Sunday, anywhere between 40 to 70 persons would sit in a circle around the altar. If you can imagine Episcopal liturgy meets in an Alcoholics Anonymous setting, then you have a pretty good idea of how the afternoon unfolded. Worship would begin with each person sharing their name out loud. And after that personal introduction, you would have recognized the collect for the day and lessons for the day. When it came time for the homily, along with hearing the vicar offer a few minutes of reflection on the day's gospel lesson, at some point, the whole gathered community would be invited to offer their own reflections. I must admit that I always found this moment of open invitation to the whole circle to reflect on the gospel to be nerve-wracking. I had inherited this practice of a group homily from the Reverend Judith Welchel, who had served as the first vicar of Church of the Advocate. She made the practice of sharing the homily with others seem effortless. But when I began to practice it, it felt clumsy and initially awkward. Some folks in the circle were slightly inebriated. Some folks in the circle lived and not too easily with mental health issues. Some of the persons in the circle were there for the first time. What if they said the wrong thing? What if someone's reflection devolved into a conflict or an argument or a fight? Was I really the vicar, or was I just an ecclesiastical bouncer? All those concerns, those doubts about how the reflection time would unfold, were all things I thought in my head, where concepts and ideas and words like to reside. But in my body, I witnessed Sunday after Sunday the Spirit of God descend upon young and old, rich and poor, sober and slightly stoned, devout and doubting, homeless and those with houses to spare. Not everyone in the circle would speak, but every Sunday, whoever shared did so in such a way to either bring you to tears or to a kind of joyful laughter. My opening remarks on the gospel had been prepared in advance with prayer and study. The other remarks offered by those in the circle grew from God's grace already being situated in their bodies. The man in the wheelchair was not burdened by the illusion he could do this life all by himself. The young woman who was a few days sober and at least for a time being free from an abusive boyfriend did not have to be told that Jesus was the suffering servant. For her, the suffering servant was the only one who could ever offer her salvation she could trust. Everyone in the circle at Church of the Advocate had experienced deep disappointments and losses and setbacks. Many were in active recovery and flourishing, while others could barely maintain stringing together a few days of sobriety. While I knew I was also in need of God's grace and forgiveness, and that such forgiveness and grace had been extended to me repeatedly, somehow in my body, I thought I was set apart. I was there as the priest, and they were the people. Church of the Advocate ministered primarily to the street community. I lived in a nice cabin in Black Mountain. I now know it was a false line I was attempting to draw. My body, like the bodies of the street community that gathered at the Church of the Advocate, could not do this life all alone. For a season, however, I thought it was enough to know grace in my mind and my intellect and accept grace on my terms. I now understand that it was not my body that was somehow stronger and somehow immune and not needing the medicine of grace. My body was simply overly defended, cut off from itself to know my true need. If you do not ask for help, that does not mean that you do not need help. It only means that you have learned not to ask and deluded yourself into believing that you can follow Jesus with your mind while leaving your body behind. If I failed to learn the lesson of grace in the body at Church of the Advocate, I was given another chance when the theologian and writer Marva Dawn came to speak at All Souls Cathedral in Asheville. By this point, I was serving on the cathedral staff there. Marva Dawn was in the area, having presented at a conference at Canoga. Along with speaking there, she agreed to preach and teach at All Souls. I was to take her to lunch after the morning's activities were done. I knew Marva Dawn from her books on worship. I knew she was a theologian who taught at Regent College in Canada and traveled widely and spoke widely and taught. What I did not know was just how much physical pain she lived with and how many ailments were upon her. Over lunch with her, I learned she had dealt with cancer and chronic pain and blindness in one eye and a kidney transplant and a foot problem that made walking difficult. As we walked to and from lunch, she leaned on me for support. That lunch, however, was not given to complaints about physical health or a woe is me attitude. That lunch was an opportunity to sit with one of the kindest, wisest, and most radiant persons I have ever encountered before or since. Joy, a tangible sense of joy, is what I felt from Marva Dawn. With all the ways in which her body was failing, grace was showing up for her and spilling out over me and anyone near us that day. Along with books on worship in the New Testament, she wrote a book entitled Being Well When We're Ill, Wholeness and Hope in Spite of Infirmity. I think it's helpful to hear from Dawn about how she understood her own body and the place of grace in it. She wrote the following. One of my biggest problems in dealing with the breakdown in my body is that I keep looking in the wrong direction. I look to the past and the capabilities I once had, instead of looking to the future and what I will someday become in the presence and by the grace of God. Perhaps that is the strongest temptation for you too. Our culture reinforces that mistake by its refusal to talk about heaven as if it were simply an old-fashioned and outdated notion. We also intensify the problem by craving present health as limited as it can be more than we desire God. A friend once said to me, "This is so hard getting old. There are so many things we can't do anymore." I guess the Lord wants to teach us something. Indeed, our bodies will never be what they previously were, and we find that difficult because we miss our former activities. But God wants to teach us to hunger for God, our greatest treasure. Instead of rejecting the notion of heaven, we ache in our deepest self to fill that concept with a larger landscape of the joy basking in God's presence. No one celebrates when their body cannot show up as we wish, be that because of addiction or illness or age or accident. What we do know and can celebrate, however, is that God's Spirit often does a greater work in us when we realize we cannot do this life in isolation from others. When we admit we need help, the help that was always around us can draw closer and actually settle in our bodies. While the wisdom of Paul's letter to the Corinthians is timeless, it may be as fellow Episcopalians in the state of Tennessee, we have a chance to hear it anew for a new reason. If we look to our past, even our recent past, it may seem that our parish churches and diocesan ministries flourished without much effort. People and resources in surplus, full Sunday school classes that did not know of Starbucks or Sunday morning yoga, a culture that directly or indirectly rooted for a certain kind of church life, all may have left us with the illusion that it was under our own power that we were blessed. Now, like you may be experiencing, the diocese in East Tennessee and our parish churches are having to learn how to practice the Christian faith in a post-Christian world. We do not hold exclusive rights to Sunday morning. If we compare ourselves to the past, we too often end up feeling as if we have failed, that we have not stewarded wisely what we have been given by those who came before us. Let me suggest a way forward that is hopeful. While I believe it to be hopeful, I do not want you to think that I am naive or in denial about the challenge before us as a community of believers seeking to follow the way of Jesus now. In this moment, we are given an opportunity to decide what it is we truly believe. Do I believe the grace of God only needs to be grasped by my mind? Or do I understand that the grace of God longs to live in my body, our physical bodies, and the physical gatherings of Episcopalians across the state? I believe if we are willing without shame or blame to reflect honestly on our bodies, both as individuals and as a collection of bodies in Christian community, then the great reversal of strength emerging where we admit we are weak is possible. Not only is it possible, but the Spirit of God has a track record of showing up in those very places when we admit our limitations and our lack and our need for help. I need help. You need help. And the prayer to offer to God now is not, "Dear God, please go back in time and remove the thorn and restore the hearing and turn back the institutional church clock." The prayer, the truest prayer, remains, "Help us, loving God. Pour grace into the places in my body and our bodies where we can admit there is lack and need and fear. And if we cannot yet admit it, at least help us to see it." Friends, grace is not a stranger showing up to shame us. Grace, deep grace, is simply coming home to live in our bodies, to take up the space God always intended for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Cole. Thank you for inspiring us and spending your time with us this weekend. We're so grateful. At this time, I'd like to call your attention to item 14 in our order of business, an open forum for candidates, and direct you to page 33 of your convention materials for a listing, summary of nominations and nominees. Also, of course, to the late nominations that are in your packet. The materials are organized by position. And we're blessed with a number of candidates this year for different positions. At this time, I'd like to ask those who are standing for election to a position in the diocese to come forward before the dais. You will make your way down. If you're here, all right, now this is going to be self-organized. Your mission, candidates, is to introduce yourself with name, your parish, and the position for which you're standing. So why don't we begin at the end? Oh, I'm sorry. The microphone actually is here with Robert. So, Robert, you'll start.
My name's Robert Osborne, and I'm the rector of St. Joseph of Arimathea Episcopal Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and I'm running for the 81st deputy to the deputy to the 81st General Convention.
I'm Charlie McLean, the vicar of St. Matthew's Church in McMinnville. I'm standing for election to the Dandridge Trust Board.
I'm Christy Beasley, and I'm on staff at St. Augustine's, and I am running for deputy to the 81st General Convention.
I'm George Bishop. I'm the senior warden of St. Paul's Franklin, and I'm standing for a position on the Bishop and Council.
I'm Christine Blaise. I'm the rector at St. Paul's in Murfreesboro, and I'm standing for deputy of General Convention.
Timothy Kimbrough, I'm the Dean and Rector at Christ Church Cathedral, standing for Deputy to General Convention.
There's a trend here. I'm Susan Huggins, St. David's, Nashville, and I'm standing for Lay Deputy to General Convention.
Vicki Burgess, I'm retired, but probably serving at one of your churches as supply this year. I am standing for election to the General Convention.
I'm Scott Kammerer from St. Philip's, Nashville, and I'm also running for Deputy General Convention.
Jody Howard, I serve as canon to the ordinary, and I'm standing for election as a clergy deputy to General Convention.
Jim Weatherly, Church of the Good Shepherd, also standing for Deputy to the General Convention.
Good afternoon, I'm Chris Bowie, serving as rector of St. Peter's in Columbia, and also would be honored to serve as deputy to General Convention.
Jacob Bottom, rector at Church of Our Savior, Gallatin, standing for Bishop and Council clergy member at large.
David Barr, I'm at St. George's, Nashville, standing for Standing Committee.
TJ Azar, priest in charge at St. Michael's Cookville, standing, I think, for a position on bishop and council.
She is absolutely correct about what she's running for. All right, the leadership really is a gift. We are blessed in having folks who are willing to stand for election to these various posts. This is a blessing to us, the gift of leadership that is being shared with the diocese. We are grateful to you all for your good work and your openness and willingness to be a candidate. So thank you all very much. All right, we are now going to be on a break for 10 minutes. So we are actually going to reconvene here at 4 o'clock. So we'll see you all in 10 minutes. Enjoy the break. Thank you all. And you'll notice that throughout our convention, we've got opportunity for the secretary to make announcements. So the secretary is here to my left. If you all have got announcements that you want made for the good of the order, please do bring them to Christine Blaze, and she will make those announcements at the time that our order of business calls for them. So thank you. Also, maybe before I call on the Credentials Committee, just to remind you that we will be in a minute taking up the order of balloting for various positions. Some of the folk who appeared before you as candidates, we will be taking up. We will also be balloting in convocations for members of B&C. So if you don't see a name on the ballot, don't despair. You're going to get your opportunity when we come to the convocation balloting tomorrow. So please note. At this time, I would like to call on the Credentials Committee for a report.
Right, Reverend Sir. The number of voting clergy delegates present is 42. The voting lay delegates present, 86, for a total voting delegation present of 128. Non-voting lay alternates present is 12. Visitors present, 7. Non-canonically resident clergy present, 11, for a total number present of 158.
Thank you very much. At this time, the chair calls on the Convention Committee on Elections to get us organized for a first ballot.
Right, Reverend Sir. If I could ask the members of the Elections Committee to be passing out ballots so people have something to look at.
Very good.
And don't forget the dais, and don't forget yourself if you vote. Jared.
Sir. Yeah, don't mark your ballots now, please. Do not. We do it this way every year. You're okay. You haven't spoiled it if you marked them already.
Reverend Sir, I believe that we can make fairly short work of most of these. For bishop and council in the lay order, we have 2 vacancies and we have 2 nominated, Deborah Maggart and Lucy Hovius. Bishop, I move on behalf of the committee that we elect both candidates by acclamation.
Thank you. All right, that we've got an election.
In the clergy order for bishop and council, we have 1 vacancy and 1 nominee, the Reverend Jacob Bottom. I move that we elect Jacob, Father Bottom, by acclamation. Somebody's on the ball over here. In the standing committee in the lay order, we have 1 vacancy and we have 1 nominee, Mr. John Harvey. I move that we elect him by acclamation. In the clergy order, we have 1 vacancy and 1 nominee, the Reverend David Barr. I move that we elect him by acclamation. On the Dandridge Trust Board, we have 1 nominee in the clergy order and 1 vacancy and 1 nominee, the Reverend Charlie McLean. I move that we elect him by acclamation. All right, now here is where it gets tricky. We have 6 nominated in each order for convention deputy. You must vote for 4, no more and no fewer, or that ballot will not count. It will be invalid. So we are electing 4, and you must vote for 4 in each order. You can use any kind of writing utensil you want. You can just make sure we know what your intention is. It doesn't matter what your mark is, but please do that now. If you would not fold them, it just saves us a little time, but if you feel really strongly about that, we won't be mad at you. And then if you are finished, please pass them inside to the nave aisle. They will be collected for you. And Bishop, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you very much. I think our balloting is done. Item number 16 in our order of business, if I could ask you to turn to page 31 in your convention material. There are a number of folks to elect upon the bishop's nomination. For treasurer of the diocese, you'll see that that's part of that first list of officers of the diocese. I'm nominating Pete Stringer from Christ Church Cathedral. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor of election, please say aye. Opposed, say no. Thank you. All right. Also, as Assistant Treasurer of the Diocese of Tennessee, James Ramsey, St. George's, Nashville. Is there a second? All right. I hear a second. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you all very much. Chancellor of the Diocese, I am nominating Jim Weatherly, Church of the Good Shepherd, Brentwood. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you all very much. Vice Chancellor of the Diocese, I am nominating Wendy Longmire of St. George's, Nashville. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right. Thank you all very much. Chancellors Emeriti. We are blessed in our Chancellors Emeriti. I am nominating David Herbert of St. George's, Nashville, and also Gareth Aiden of now St. George's, Nashville. They are a slate. All those in, I need a second, please. Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you all very much. Commission on Ministry, I have got several nominations, and your eye should be drawn by the asterisks. I am nominating Mendy Richards of St. Michael's, Cookville, the Reverend Cynthia Seifert, Church of the Epiphany, Lebanon, and Scott Johnson, Church of the Resurrection, Franklin, to the Commission on Ministry. They are a slate. Do I have a second? All right. Thank you all very much. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right. Thank you. To the Disciplinary Board of the Diocese of Tennessee, I have got several nominations. The Reverend Colin Ambrose, St. George's, Nashville, Paul Babb, Church of the Good Shepherd, Brentwood, and the Reverend Vicky Burgess, non-parochial in Nashville. Do I have a second for this slate? All right, all those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you all very much. Episcopal Endowment Corporation. Oh, pass this by. I don't believe I have any nominations this year. St. John's, Ashwood. First of all, to the board there, you'll see a list of asterisk names there. They are a slate. All those in, excuse me, I need a second. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you very much. Also, continuing on now on page 32, I've got a number of nominations to the as honorary board members at St. John's, Ashwood. Is there a second for this slate? All right. All those in favor of election, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you all very much. St. Mary's Swanee Board, if you'll look on page 32, actually a slight amendment here. I'm placing in nomination Rob Barrick, his name, from Christ Church Cathedral, as a diocesan representative on the St. Mary's Board. Is there a second? All right. All those in favor of election, please say aye. All right, thank you all very much. And then finally, trustees of the University of the South, again, continuing on page 32, and I am nominating Ed Miller, Christ Church Cathedral, Nashville, as a trustee. Is there a second? Thank you. All those in favor of election, please say aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you all very much. All right, at this time I'm drawing your attention to item 17 and also to page 60, where you'll find the material, the draft diocesan budget that has been approved by the Bishop and Council and now is going to be placed before you all. We will actually have a hearing tomorrow on the budget, and we will actually take action on the budget tomorrow, but this is to draw your attention to it. Please, are you a question, Scott? Or
Right, Reverend Sir, Scott Kammerer, St. Philip's. On behalf of Bishop and Council, I move the 2023 budget.
All right, thank you very much. All right, thank you. All right, it's been moved, it's placed before you, and we will actually take it up as an item of action tomorrow. At this time, I'd like to call on the Secretary of Convention for announcements.
Thank you, Right Reverend Sir. I have two. It has come to the convention's attention how much you like a good raffle, which maybe you did not know.
Well, you know, a raffle, I think we've had bets on, you know, the timing of sermons and other such stuff in the past, but a raffle, I think, is a new item.
It's a new wrinkle. Thanks to the beloved community. Thank you, beloved community. The Commission for Racial Reconciliation is offering a book raffle. 6 books for adults, for kids, 6 winners. You may register. There are fish bowls on either side of the name in the windows. You can put your name in there, and those will be picked tomorrow. Please register to win. There is a shuttle bus that will return you to your cars at Brook Hollow Church. It is now the St. George's bus. The driver, if the driver is not in the bus, will be in Sanders Hall, and the driver asks, please do not linger after we finish tonight.
Don't get on the wrong bus. Who knows where you'll end up. All right, thank you. We've come to the end of our business for today, and so we're in recess. We will gather tomorrow at 9 o'clock for the celebration. Oh, excuse me, yes. We will actually hear from our Credentials Committee and also have report on elections. And then we will continue with the business of convention, beginning at 9 o'clock tomorrow. We're on recess. Thank you all very much. Enjoy your evening.